What's up guys, Mike Tierney here from Princess Auto. Welcome to Tech Tips with Mike T. We're talking about power systems for RVing. So when it comes to power systems, if you're either in-grid or off-grid, so if you're boondocking, which would be meaning that you don't have an actual power source coming from a hard line coming into the trailer, you may have some options. So you can go with generators. Some RV systems will use solar panels. So we're going to go through the generator first and some of the options you have and you know how to select some of the plugs that go with what generators you may be looking at. Now, most RVs have either one or two systems. They have a 12-volt system, battery operated, and then they have a higher power or higher voltage system, which would be our AC current. So that would be 120 volts and so on. So the RV has inverters that can change that. Now, to supply that power, we have different ways. We can either plug directly into a power source if we're in a campground that supply it. Now, each RV may have a different power requirement. If you have a large RV with multiple air conditioners, you're probably going to be going with a 50 amp service. So if the place that you're RVing has that service, you'll have a 50 amp available to the RV. Now, standard RVs with smaller air conditioners, they typically will use a 30 amp. That's what my RV uses, so I use a 30 amp system. Now, the amperage is what the RV actually needs. So, you need a certain amount of power to run your air conditioner, you need a certain amount of power to run your hot water tank, your stove, whatever it might be that's drawing power, lights, and you have to be mindful of that supplied power. If you overload the circuit or try to demand too much, that's where you're going to run into popping breakers or fuses and that kind of stuff. So if you're not able to connect directly to an RV, hookup, and then we've got to be more portable, you either have to go with generators or onboard generators or portable generators and or solar. So when you're looking at your generators, there's basically two types of generators to choose from. Within all the different generators, you've got what's called an inverter generator, like the one up here. So this is a Hyundai model. It basically is what they call a quiet run. So inverter generators typically will run quieter. You'll find that they're more compact. They're pretty good on fuel efficient. And depending on where you're RVing, that level of noise that they create can be an issue. So if you're in an RV park that doesn't have power, but you are in a park, they may have restrictions on how loud that generator can be. And that's where an inverter is really good. You just got to be mindful of what they can produce. Now, typically when you're talking about generators, it's producing a certain amount of wattage. That's the power that's produced. And that can get a little confusing, how much wattage versus how much amperage we need. Typically, volts times amps equals watts, and that's a quick little math thing that you can do, but the generator produces a certain amount of wattage. Some is at peak watts, that's initial startup, and then continuous watts. Those are the numbers we want to look at. So, if a generator says that it's 2200 watts peak, it's not actually going to produce that 2200 watts that you may need. It's going to be something a little less, maybe 1800 or 1500, depending on the models that you're choosing from. If you need more wattage, so more power to run more equipment or heavier equipment in your RV, you may need to go to a non-inverter type generator. So we've got a wide selection of gas-powered, what I would call an analog generator. So it has just a standard generator, it's got a whole bunch of outlets, and you can range from 2,000 watts all the way up to upwards of 15,000 watts on these portable units. So there's a big selection. Just keep in mind, analog type generators, they only produce the wattage, but they also will give you a little bit more amperage in some cases. So you want to make sure that you can use those generators in the parks that you're at. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and you want to listen to the noise level of a generator running, you can do things to baffle that. but you definitely want to be mindful when you select a generator for RVing that the places that you're going to go and visit either are generator friendly, or they'll check the level, the decibel level of the generators and the RV parks, which will allow you to run. Now, if you can't use the generators, then you'll have to go to another supply, maybe solar. Now, hooking up your RV power to your generator, there's so many options. There's a bunch of different plugs. You can see them on the table here. We have different plug orientations. You'll have to select, if you're going to match it to a generator, you got to make sure that the generator outlets will match what you're going to plug your RV plug into. Now, direct from an RV plug from the supply may not actually mate up with the power supply from the generator. So you may need to get an adapter, and there's lots of different variations of these adapters. In this case, this one's a 30 amp to a 30 amp, 3-prong to a 4-prong. So depending on what setup you have, so you can see that there's 4 prongs in relation to the 3 prongs. So this is actually the setup that I have in my RV. I have a 3-prong 30 amp plug that would plug into a generator. The beauty about the 4-prong in this case is it's a twist lock. So this twists, so it locks. So if if for some reason you ink on the cord, it's not going to pop out, or the vibration of the generator won't allow that plug to wiggle out. So locking plugs are a great option. This second one here, this one's a 30 amp 3-prong to a 15 amp. So this would be, a standard outlet going to a 30 amp. So there's little adapters that you can get for all sorts of different connections. Having a few of them are a great option. This one here is similar to the first one, except this one is a 30 amp 3-prong to a 30 amp 3-prong. So just in a different configuration. So it gives you those options if you're not sure. Maybe you're traveling to different RV parks and they have a different hookup than you have. That would be pretty awkward, and you'd have to find a store to go and try to make your electrical connections. There's also adapters. Sometimes these are called dog bones in the layman's terms. So we've got, there's typically a surge protectors in a lot of these because you never know what kind of power you're getting from your RV spots. They've got nice handles so you can grab onto, so you're not getting your hands close to any, accidental, coming into contact with electricity. And it's a great way to handle these. So you can see that, this one's a 3-prong over to a 4-prong. This is a 30 amp to a 50 amp. So if you've got a 50 amp service, but you're only allowed to plug into a 30 amp, you can plug in and use this adapter. It works really well, a nice heavy gauge cord to reduce any kind of buildup of heat on the cord. This one's quite common, so this one's similar. This is a 30 amp. So we have a 30 amp plug to a 15 amp plug. So if you're connecting to an RV source or maybe a generator that uses a 30 amp plug, and you just want to plug in something that's standard 120 volt that just has the 3 prongs, you've got that option as well. So, not one type of adapter is good for all applications. So you may need to have a few of these in your power equipment kit. So that way, if you are traveling to all of these different RV parks or locations, camping parks, you've got options and you're not in a panic. So connecting to the generator is really simple. You're just plugging in. Many generators also, consider themselves RV generators, so they will actually have the 30 amp or the 50 amp designated plugs, as well as maybe some other 120 15 amp plugs. So it just depends on what you're looking for in the market, how much your budget is, and sometimes it's a brand that you like, or maybe it's just something that's on sale that you might need as a backup. Running a generator, I run a generator on mine. I don't have a power hookup, so I use an inverter generator, and it works my whole system. The beauty about it is it's quiet, and we're allowed to run those generators through the evening. So if I want to have air conditioning on, I can have that air conditioning. If you're not using a generator to either recharge your batteries, because that will also work in your RV. So if you've got battery powered 12-volt systems, you may have one battery, you may have two batteries. You're going to use some of that battery. If you're off grid, you're going to draw power. So your fridge needs it. You may have a water heater that has it. You're probably not running your air conditioning off of that 12-volt system. There are specific systems that do that, but for the general, most people are not running their air conditioning off their 12-volt system. And as you have lights on, or you're doing stuff around the RV, you may have some power consumption from your battery. So you're looking for a battery that has a deep cycle application. It's not at all recommended that you use a automotive style battery. They look similar, but look for the deep cycle marine or RV application. They have more amperage, they deliver more cranking amps. They are designed to drain down and recharge up, whereas an automotive battery is not that way. The automotive batteries are not designed to discharge all the way and recharge up. They continually charge. So that's the beauty about an RV battery. You can discharge it but recharge it. Now if you're using a generator to maybe run the power frequently or infrequently, that will also typically charge your battery, so to rejuvenate the power that you're available in your off-grid stuff. If you don't have a generator, we would have to go to a solar system. So a solar powered, super energy efficient, lots of different types of solar out there. Typically you need a controller with your panel. There's different types of solar panels. There are some solar panels that are specifically must be in direct sunlight. Other solar panels just need light to create a charge. Within that, they will produce a certain amount of wattage, and then that will go to your controller, then to the battery, and then that will change the way that power comes in, and it'll allow you to charge your battery or run some equipment directly off the solar. That is different for many applications. Not one does all the same thing. So when you are looking for off-grid RVing, you want to make sure you do your due diligence on how much power you're going to need or how much you're going to consume in a certain amount of time, and then look at what solar panels are going to be best suited. Do you want one that you can just, once you get out to the RV park, just set up and just kind of like a suitcase, or just lean it against the RV and just have it trickle charge? Or do you want something more permanently installed on the top of your RV? There's all kinds of mounting equipment that you would need. And then there's different inverters and controllers that you would need to wire in for your system to operate that. Maybe you've got one RV battery, maybe you have two. The more batteries you have, if you connect them properly, you've got more storage ability, so you've got longer usage that you can. So most RVs will either have one or two. There are the larger units that have 4 batteries, but definitely one battery on every RV is very common on the smaller models. So solar is a great option if you're off grid. It's not going to run everything directly. Each solar panel is rated for, some are rated for 200 watts, some are rated for 80 watts of power input-output. Some of the controllers you can plug a USB if you want to charge a phone or something off of it. That may work for you, but definitely you want to do your due diligence. It's an expensive proposition, but if you do want to, spend more time off grid, solar is a very good option. And obviously having a generator as a backup would be a really good choice to have. Now, there are some generators that are mounted in the RV itself, so self-contained generators. Typically, they're mostly diesel. Some are propane. They run off a propane system, but definitely those are more unique to specific RVs. Well, that's it for Tech Tips with Mike T. See you next time.